Hi, Paul. Welcome. I am here to introduce the world to you, Paul Boyer from Seattle, to share his story about healing and friendship that's occurring. My name's Maureen Curis, and I put together a monthly call back in July called Grief. We started out Grief and Black Lives Matter. It was born from my grief over what was happening after George Floyd's death and what took place after that, and the grief that I was feeling talking to my friends of color. So this has just continued on. We just had our 10th monthly call and sharing, and Paul has joined our group. But yesterday he shared a very powerful story of courage, of conviction, of shame, and of healing. And Paul, I would love for you to share this story with others. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Maureen. I really appreciate this opportunity. So I call this my freedom from shame story. It was 1977. I was 14 years old in my final summer at Camp Whitehall, a 6-week all-boys summer camp on the Mattaponi River outside of Richmond, Virginia. I was not keen on taking the American Red Cross swimming test that required a 500-yard swim in the murky, dark waters of the Mattaponi. I had a fish phobia, afraid of being touched by a fish each time I was immersed in the dark, deep channel of the river. My friend Clyde was in a rowboat, serving as those of us taking the swim test. Clyde and I were in the same grade and had been fellow campers the summer before. This summer, he was a junior counselor in training. Clyde was Black, the only Black kid at Camp Whitehall, which was comprised mostly of well-heeled boys who attended St. Stephen's, a private Episcopal school in Alexandria, Virginia. I was about halfway through the swim test when the nightmare happened. I was mid-stroke when suddenly a large, slimy fish swam right up against my torso. I freaked out, practically drowning in a wave of panic. I had to get out of that river immediately. Clyde was sitting in the rowboat about 20 yards away. I thrashed through the water towards him. As I reached Clyde, I hurled myself out of the water onto the side of the boat, practically flipping it and almost catapulting him out. As I struggled to heave myself into the rowboat, a shocked Clyde yelled at me, "What are you doing? Get off!" I was desperate and hysterical. When I met Clyde's resistance, I shouted with fury, "Let me in the boat, you!" And I called my friend Clyde the N-word. I'd never called anyone that in my life before, and I never have since. I got in the boat. Clyde must have rowed us to shore. I have no recollection of what happened afterwards. The next day, Clyde and I were playing basketball together as if nothing had happened. We never spoke of that incident. I never acknowledged what I called Clyde nor apologized to him. That was my last summer at Camp Whitehall. Once camp ended, Clyde and I went our separate ways to our different high schools and then off to college. We never communicated or saw each other again. But I never forgot. I was filled with shame. What I called Clyde went against all that I knew was right and decent. I crossed the line that was unimaginable for me. That's not who I am, yet it was. Over the years, I tried to bury that painful memory, but the shame was like a searing hot coal that wouldn't go out. It was always there. And though I mostly repressed it and didn't think about the incident often, it would on occasion rear its ugly, shaming head. Saying that to Clyde was the one thing I regretted most in my life. And whenever that scene replayed in my mind, I was consumed with shame. Shame, as described by author Brene Brown, shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. Intensely painful. Fast forward 43 years to last summer, June 2020, just a couple weeks after George Floyd's murder. That tragedy and the BLM protests were prompting a racial reckoning for me and many others, and an uncomfortable growing awareness of my white privilege and racial biases. It was Saturday, June 13th, the day after my girlfriend and I participated in Seattle's 60,000 strong, silent, powerful BLM march. We went for a day hike to an alpine lake in the Cascade Mountains. As we launched overlooking the lake, my girlfriend mentioned how she's afraid of being touched by a fish when swimming in water where she can't see below. Suddenly, it was like that shameful incident at Camp Whitehall leapt out of the lake. I shared with her my similar phobia and the story of Clyde as the flames of shame returned. But this time was different. Instead of repressing that painful memory, I suddenly felt a clarity. I had to take action to try and right this wrong. The next day, I did a Google search for Clyde, and up popped a link to a senior financial advisor at Wells Fargo in Arizona with the same name. I clicked on the link, and there appeared a photo of a Black guy with graying hair along with his professional contact information. I emailed him and asked if he was the same Clyde who attended Camp Whitehall in Virginia. Clyde soon responded, saying yes, and that he remembered me. I then asked if he had some time to talk, as I wanted to share something about our time together at Camp Whitehall. Clyde replied that he was free at 9 and 11 a.m. the next day. I took the leap and grabbed his 9 o'clock slot. That night, I suddenly wondered, how is Clyde going to react? Am I going to upset him? For a brief period, I questioned whether this was the right thing to do. But then the clarity quickly returned. My intention was heartfelt and sincere, and I had to trust that that would come through. When Clyde answered my phone call the next morning, and we heard each other's voices for the first time since 1977, he laughed when I said, "It's been a while." I asked Clyde, "How has your journey been over the past 43 years?" He opened the conversation, expressing gratitude for how fortunate he is. He's been married 34 years, has 2 sons, ages 26 and 24, and unlike his parents, has a college degree and owns a beautiful home. Clyde started telling me about his grandparents. His grandfather worked as a chauffeur for a New York stockbroker, and his grandmother served as the family's maid. Clyde observed how he is now in a similar professional position as that stockbroker, something his grandparents could never have imagined. Prompted by the recent social turmoil, Clyde dove right into an authentic discussion of race in this country and shared some of the challenges and opportunities he's experienced as a Black man in America. He talked about his classmate, who at their high school graduation from St. Stephen's expressed his admiration for Clyde and how much he learned from him, then said how sorry he was that his parents would never allow him to invite Clyde to their home. He also recalled something his mother shared following a birthday pool party he attended. The mother of his white classmate who hosted the party told Clyde's mother that Clyde was always welcome at their home and to swim in their pool regardless of what others may say. Clyde commended the movie Remember the Titans, a true story about the integration of a high school football team, which took place in our neighboring backyard of Alexandria, Virginia, at T.C. Williams High School, just 5 years before he and I were high school freshmen. We discussed the events of the last few weeks and how our nation seems to be at an inflection point for meaningful racial change, finally. I talked about how the recent events have shined a light on some of my racial blind spots and helped me gain awareness of the advantages I've had throughout my life simply because I'm a white male. We had talked for over 50 minutes when Clyde said he was going to have to jump off the phone soon and asked, didn't I have something else I wanted to share about our time at Camp Whitehall? It could not have been scripted any better. The heart-to-heart discussion set the table perfectly. I was caught off guard by the wave of emotion that swept over me as I began relaying the incident of that large fish swimming up against me and the utter fear and panic that I experienced. I recalled how, as I heaved myself onto the side of his rowboat, almost launching him out, and then encountering his shocked resistance to my desperation. I demanded that he let me in while shouting the horrible slur. I told Clyde how calling him that was the single biggest regret I've had, and how it's caused me immense shame over these many years. Through my tears, I said, "Clyde, I am so very sorry. I apologize for saying that to you." Clyde replied simply, "Apology accepted," and asked if I was okay. Just like that, the shame I'd been carrying for decades evaporated. I felt free. The burning coal of shame was extinguished. I thanked Clyde profoundly. Interestingly, Clyde said he had no recollection of that incident, which actually added to my relief. We agreed to keep in touch. I closed by saying, "Clyde, this was a treat and a gift, and I sincerely thank you." Clyde responded, "The feeling is mutual."
I got through that without crying like I did when you first read it. It's so powerful. Yesterday when we were talking about this and the ripple effect that this can have is so significant. The step you took was so powerful because how many people just live with the shame or they just bury it and don't think of it. But the fact that you stepped up with the courage and conviction to find this man, and now you've established a friendship again. It's just so overwhelming to me. And we talked about self-awareness. You have to have a lot of self-awareness and do a lot of soul searching to be able to take that step. So I applaud you.
Well, thank you, Maureen. That's very kind of you. And it has been a powerful experience for me and for Clyde. As an epilogue here, I am in touch with Clyde. I actually had the chance of visiting him in person in Arizona in February. And we went for a hike together, having not seen each other in literally 43 years, and had such a good, rich conversation that we continued it and met for dinner a few nights later. What struck me is I was doing this for myself. I needed to release the shame, and I could only do it by making it right and apologizing. And it was clear that that was what I had to do. But what I didn't realize was the impact that this would have on Clyde, even though he didn't remember the incident. The fact that I made this effort, I think was representative to him in many ways, as he shared with me that he, as a Black man in America, has suffered many indignities. And he said, "Paul, do you know how many people have ever contacted me to apologize for something they said to me? One. That's it." And it had an amazing impact on Clyde, which I was not anticipating. As I said, I was worried he was going to be upset. I wasn't sure how he was going to react. And the fact that this had a positive, powerful impact on him as well for his own healing just lifted us both up.
Wow. You know how I think that so many of us live to, like, if we impact one life, our life will be successful. And look at the life you've impacted. Now I'm going to get all teary again because I'm usually not the real emotion. I am emotional at certain things, but this has just really hit me so deep because you've impacted his life. He's obviously impacted yours. And now you're going to go impact other lives and encourage through your actions, like I said, that ripple effect of maybe other people stepping up into this. I love how you talk about your white privilege. Gosh, I was living in Chicago in my late 20s and Oprah was real popular then. And whenever anyone came to visit, they wanted to go to see Oprah. So I had a couple girlfriends visiting and we were at Oprah and there was I still remember the theme. It was called What America Thinks, but there, she was having an interaction with this gentleman. They had picked certain people and they were asking them questions. But she said to him, you know, you have to take responsibility for slavery. You're a white man and you have to own it. And I remember being so indignant. Like, he does not have to own that. I don't have to own that because I'm a white woman. I was like not even born. My family was in California. It was barely a state and they were all from Ireland, you know. But I remember really being indignant. And I didn't want to go see Oprah for a long time. But as I've aged, I've realized she was absolutely right. The white privilege that I've been raised with. I haven't had to fight my way for everything. I haven't had police officers pull me over for no reason at all. I have 3 sons that went to a school in downtown Seattle. It was it's an all boys school, mixed race school. And my friend and I used to have conversations that she worried. She had to worry every time her Black son stepped out the door, and she still does. And I would say, I don't even understand that worry. Of course, as a mother, I worry just because, you know, I'm not a big worrier, but, you know, of course, when your children go off. But I used to say to her, I can never understand. I can never understand what it must be like for you. I will never be able to because I have white sons. And I've realized that white privilege is something that every white person has. We don't have to fight our way through school. We don't have to fight for the best job and prove ourselves. So I think that's why these messages are so important to me, because I've always felt like I grew up in Orange County, California. It was in the 70s, 60s and 70s, as white could be, pretty much. But I've always had, you know, an acceptance of everyone. And for me as a child, I didn't understand how people couldn't accept others. And the thought that your friend wasn't allowed to go to people's pools or to their birthday parties because of the color of his skin. I've had friends that have expressed those same experiences. And I just hope that now things can change because of stories like yours.
Well, I hope so as well. And it's clear for me that I want to do something, and I hope this is an opportunity to make a difference, because as I mentioned, this year has been an amazing one of growth, awareness, and learning, and having that awareness of the advantages I've had as a white male. And it is a privilege. And those of us who are privileged have a responsibility.
Yes, we do.
And I'm committed to that. And I've always thought of myself as a non-racist.
Yes.
But now I need to take it to another level as an anti-racist.
Well, I think
really being in action.
Yes, anti-racist. I think that's what I was trying to say, non-racist. But, you know, once all of this, I've started on this journey, I went to Harvard School. They have the inherent bias quizzes. I don't know if you've ever gone on. It's free. Just Google Harvard inherent bias quizzes, and they have them on all different things. I think I took 3 or 4, but I want to go back and take them all, because I was shocked to see that there are some inherent biases that came up for me. And I thought, okay, until, you know, I always quote at the beginning of our calls, most often, I quote the Maya Angelou quote, and this is paraphrasing: we do what we do until we know better. And then when we know better, we can do better. So that inherent bias, taking those quizzes, you know, it helps shine light on areas that I need to improve. Paul, I think I lost you there for a minute. Oh, there, you're back. I think you were frozen for a minute, but so
unfortunately,
I would highly encourage the inherent bias quiz to take it and see what it's all about. But Paul, thank you. Well, I want to share your story far and wide.
Well,
See,
I'm honored by that, and I'm here to support that however I can. So thanks for this
so
opportunity.
let's put our heads together and get it out there.
All right.
Okay,
Wonderful.
thank you so much.
Take care. We'll
Take
be in
care.
touch. Bye-bye.